You're listening to Wanderlust Diaries, the ultimate travel podcast for solo female travellers 40 and beyond who are ready to explore the world. Join me, Terri Reynolds, where we talk all things travel and why it's so important and what's stopping you from getting out there and exploring the world. We'll discuss the steps you can take now to fix it, empowering you to ignite your curiosity and set your heart free so that you have the confidence to travel wherever you want, whenever you want. Offering insights, tips, hacks, and remarkable women's stories along the way. So come on, grab your passport, pack your sense of adventure, and get ready to be inspired. Whether you're a first-time solo traveller or a seasoned globetrotter, Wanderlust Diaries is your community of like-minded souls, uplifting and supporting women over 40 who dare to explore. Welcome to this episode of Wanderlust Diaries, and today I am joined by Dr Eliza Collins, who is here to tell us all about her solo travel adventures and tell us what she's been up to while she was travelling around the world. So hi Eliza, thank you so much for joining me today, really appreciate it, and I can't wait to hear all your stories. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Terri. I live in Providence, Rhode Island in the United States. I'm originally from Western New York, which is about 6 hours away from where I currently live. And I kind of started traveling at a young age with my family. We did an annual trip to Florida, which is a 21-hour drive down and back, every year on spring break. So that was kind of what we started out doing. So my parents really got me into very kind of comfortable, predictable, routine style travel. So I always knew what to expect, and we had our routines and the things that we packed and our little, ways of going about it. And then as I got older, my brother was 8 years older than me. So by the time he was out of the house, it was just me and my parents. And I was a pretty responsible kid. I wasn't much of a risk taker, I guess you could say. I actually work in burnout recovery and psychedelic consulting now, which got into psychedelics way later. That's not stuff I experimented with as a kid. So I was a pretty trustworthy kid. So when we started doing some traveling, they would let me go off on my own. So we would be at a particular location and they'd say, okay, you can go explore, meet me back here at this time. They'd always have a weather eye. And so I really got like a nice introduction to independent travel by kind of being drip fed that experience.
I like the sound of that, because there won't be, how old were you then, Eliza? Because there's not many kids that would be allowed, especially on their own, to go off.
Yeah. So probably, and again, this was a different time, right? I'm an elder millennial. I hate that phrase, elder millennial. I'm almost Gen X, but this was kind of like the mid 90s. So I was probably like 14, 15. And the other thing that my parents would do around that time is they'd let me bring a friend. So we would talk to my friends' parents, and if they were comfortable with it, they would accompany us on a week-long vacation. So I wasn't always necessarily on my own. I had a little bit of a buddy system kind of a thing going on. And that was a really nice way to kind of experience that. This was also pre-cell phone. So it was making sure that we did enough research ahead of time. Okay, if we need a grown-up or, somebody that we can trust, where are the places in the theme park where you would go to find something like that? Or, who's wearing the uniform? So there was a lot of preparation. My dad works in civil service. So we had a lot of conversation beforehand that made the actual experience a lot less stressful. So preparation for me when it comes to any kind of travel, but solo travel in particular, research has been a big thing for me. And don't get me wrong, I've been in a lot of situations where I've just found myself in a situation I was like, oh, this could have been bad after the fact. But I was really taught that preparation and to sort of know your surroundings and know your generally what experience you're looking for. High level of awareness.
And I love that. I love the fact that you've brought that up already. The fact about the research and about literally being aware of what's around you, because at that age, not many people, we don't, because we've normally got an adult around us telling us about this, that, and the other. Be aware. So that obviously set you up nicely for later life. So I love that.
Yeah, it really did. And then from there, we sort of expanded. So when I was 17, my cousin and her husband at the time he worked for a company that relocated them to Sweden. So we all lived in the United States. They got relocated to Sweden, and they had a daughter at the time who was a baby. And so they asked my parents, would your daughter like to come over and kind of like be an au pair for the summer?
Wow.
Because we're in Sweden, we're going to go to France, so she can come and help take care of the baby. And so that was like the next level of solo travel. So my parents dropped me off at the airport. We talked about how to, get to your gate and all of this. I traveled across the Atlantic by myself, but I met family on the other side. So then I had somebody taking care of me to make sure that I, got to where I was going, and I had people that I knew and trusted that I was staying with. And so while I was there, when we were in France, I was allowed to take a bike and go to the market, or do some solo things there. And again, it was that extra little step of independence that I wasn't just sort of thrown into the deep end. So I had kind of a unique introduction to solo travel because it was really a much more stepwise process, which I don't think was intentional in terms of getting me to become a solo traveler. It's just sort of naturally what happened. So I can understand the fear or the anxiety or the trepidation for people who have never done this before as adults. It's a whole different world that you're stepping into.
It absolutely is, isn't it? And I know the first time I went solo, I was 39.
Yeah.
And at the time, there were no mobile phones. There was no internet, so it is a different world now. And yeah, you have to, I did have to rely on myself a lot more.
Reading maps and making.
Exactly.
I did that too.
I've said this on other podcasts, that I had to carry with me, because I backpacked around the world for a year. I had to carry with me the rough guide books, equivalent to Lonely Planet. I had to have all of those in my backpack as well.
In your rucksack, yep.
As everything else I had to take with me, So I love this because, yes, there is that fear of stepping out alone, going off, doing it yourself. And we were having a little bit of a chat before we came on, and I was saying that over this past week, I've been looking at the top 3 barriers, for would-be solo travelers, those people who are out there, they're dying to get to it, they really can't wait to do it, but things are holding them back. And the top 3, and one of those, it was around planning, and making sure you knew where you were going. And like you've already alluded to, research. You can't research enough. So tell us what your research would look like.
Research nowadays is largely about looking very heavily into the area that I'm going to and kind of understanding, like, what are my transportation options? What do I want to do? So what's the goal of traveling? Am I going just to wander around and be a tourist? Do I have something particular in mind? I really love music. And so for a period of time pre-pandemic, before everything shut down, I was getting back into solo travel. So I would choose to go see a concert or a show or something like that. So that was my intention. So I built off of that. Where do I want to stay that's maybe close to the venue or has really good restaurant options? Like, what's my purpose for going? And then I build my research around that. And if it is just to kind of go screw around and find out and see the area, I want to know where. I also like to have escape routes. So I like to be very close to public transportation. And to know what kinds of transportation there are. I'm very cognizant, even in my regular life, of not getting stuck. I don't like feeling stuck someplace. So that's the biggest one. And then something that a lot of times my research is born out of getting to a place and realizing that I didn't do enough research, and then adding that type of research to my research plan. So a very fun, in retrospect, story. I went to Seattle, which I'm on the East Coast of the United States. This is all the way on the other side of the US. And in that area of the world, it's a part of the Ring of Fire, which is that volcanic ring that runs from like Japan and that area all the way across the north in Russia and Alaska, and then back down in the northern United States. So I was going to Seattle for, I think, 4 or 5 days. I brought a bunch of cute outfits and ballet flats and some high heels because I was just going to kind of wander around and take myself out to dinner and see some friends. I'm not terribly outdoorsy. I don't hike, so I don't have like hiking boots or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting on a bus on maybe day 3, and I look at one of the adverts, one of the banners on the bus, and it says, what is your, and I'm not even sure I'm going to pronounce this right, but what is your Lahar plan?
Oh,
Lahar.
yeah.
And I was like, I don't even know what a Lahar is. I need to have a plan for a Lahar. And this was in 2017. So I had my cell phone. So I pulled my cell phone out and I pulled up Google and I looked up a Lahar. It is an extraordinarily violent mudslide that is the result of a volcanic eruption. Seattle is seated on the ocean at the base of Mount Rainier. And Mount Rainier has not exploded in a very long time, but it's still an active volcano. And so, like, grade schools and high schools have Lahar plans where, like, an alarm goes off, just like we might have a fire drill in a standard building. They have these Lahar drills where it's like, okay, you have to go out and you have to get to high ground as quickly as possible.
Wow.
And I'm sitting on a bus in kitten heels going, I don't have a Lahar plan and I'm here for 2 more days. I don't know what to do. Like, I get off the bus and go buy Converse? And that was the moment where I was like, research the weather better. It's not just temperature and humidity. So what geography are you walking into? What natural disaster could you experience? If you're going to go to, like, Thailand, do you want to go during monsoon season?
Exactly.
That was something that I thought about. But, like, volcanic, after effects and things like that, it's so far. Like, the worst that we get on the East Coast, we get the occasional, like, offshore earthquake, but, like, we get snow. That's it, and people panic about that. And I grew up in Western New York where we got a ton of snow. I'm like, this is cute. So a lot of times research sometimes is the result of me just, like, screwing up and not having a plan.
Yeah, like, we don't know what we don't know sometimes.
Right.
We don't know what we need to research either.
Right. So that...
It's about researching that area to find out what we do need to know. Yeah,
precisely.
Things I need to know about this destination.
Yes. And also kind of just being a little forgiving of yourself, because we can't know everything. No. So I didn't crap on myself for not having a Lahar plan.
Yeah.
I will have one now when I go. I will buy hiking boots to bring with me because I won't need them otherwise.
Yeah.
But that's just something that got folded in as a result of making a mistake and kind of giving yourself permission to make those mistakes. I think that's the thing that we sometimes have a hard time with solo travel.
Eliza, because we can't know those things. And, there's no good putting on rose-colored glasses and thinking everything's going to be absolutely, you can, and, plan, not 100%, 150%, plan it, research it as much as you like, but also plan in to be flexible. Plan in those incidents that just take us by surprise, because they will do. And then you have to pivot.
Planning for the plan to go out the window. A friend of mine used to have this saying. He goes, if you want to make God laugh, make plans. I don't know about God. I'm not sure about that whole thing. I'm open to it. But I love that saying, because, like, you can plan to the nth degree, and then God, the universe, circumstance is just going to be like, here's this thing. Have fun. Enjoy it.
The only thing we can promise, isn't it, really, and live by, is change. It will change. That will happen no matter what. There's a proper saying around that. I just can't remember what it is. But it's true, change is inevitable no matter what you do. So don't, for anybody listening, don't be afraid of change at all. Embrace it, because it really is a learning curve as well.
Yeah. And I would say, actually, like, in a sort of oxymoronic way, plan for the unplanned. Like, build, not necessarily like exactly how it's going to go or how you're going to handle it, but anticipate that that's what you are going to experience it. Build that into your knowledge and allow yourself to kind of sit with the discomfort of, like, I am going to encounter things that I don't know how to deal with. I'm probably going to be okay. Like, vast majority of the time it works out in our favor.
I mean, yes, and there are, they happen on small and bigger scales. And when my first port of call, when I decided to go off around the world for a year, when I'd never even really been abroad, was to go to India. And long story short, I wanted to get a flight from Delhi down to, it was Bombay at the time, but Mumbai, as it is now. And I got totally scammed. Went in and bought a ticket and all the rest of it. I mean, I was lucky. I spoke to the guy where I was staying, and he said, go straight back there now, he said, and demand your money back, or you will or you'll phone the police. And he said, if you need any help, I'll come with you. So that's exactly what I did. You know, I just went in very firm, and I did get it back. But oh my gosh, that frightened me to death.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, because I'd totally been scammed. I walked in there, you know, eyes totally shut, wide, as they say, eyes wide shut. But that was just one incident, you know, nothing major happened, but it could have, you know. So it's how you deal with that then, isn't it?
Yep. And I will always appreciate when somebody, like, I always endeavor to be kind, but I also appreciate when people help me navigate the culture. I had to go to Toronto for a seminar, and I actually have a hyphenated last name. Collins was my biological mother's name. So I took that because the other half of my name is Italian, and it's got a lot of vowels, and it's hard to pronounce and even harder to remember. But that's on my license. And Collins is actually not on my passport, but I've been going by Collins for so long that when I booked my ticket, I booked it under Dr. Eliza Collins. Now, Collins my hyphenated name is on my driver's license, which is a state ID, but that's not my passport.
Yes.
And it was just a derp moment that I made when I was booking my ticket, didn't even think about it. And I got to the gate and they were like, we can't let you fly. And I was going to Canada, and I was like, okay, what do you need? And they were like, the name change paperwork. And it was the one thing I had transferred my purse, and it didn't make it through. And so now I have a copy of that goes everywhere with me. And my passport will be updated with a hyphenated name. But I was basically there waiting for my brother to drive an hour down to where my apartment is, pick up this paperwork and come back. And I was super nice to the gate. He was like, I'm so sorry. I said, look, this is your job. I'm not here to get you in trouble. This is my fault. It's my idiocy. I can try and call and see if I can get my name changed, but this is not your fault. It's fine. And I pulled my stuff off to the side, and I saw him like talk to the other gate attendant, and he sort of like waved me over, and he's like, we're going to change it for you. Don't tell anybody, but you're really nice. And we never get that. Nobody's ever nice about this stuff. So also like kindness and understanding, and kind of taking responsibility when it's our fault a little bit. It's not always going to get you the result that you want, but it will much more likely get you the result that you want. Or in your case, being in a culture where that kind of firmness was needed. And you're like, no, this is not the time to be kind and polite and sort of a little bit of a, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
Softer.
And I took that guidance from, you know, he was a local guy that I spoke to, that I think it was in the hostel I was staying, not the hostel, the hotel I was in, or wherever I was staying at the time, you know, and he saw me come in, he could see the look on me, he said, something's happened, what's wrong? And I told him, and he said, right, okay. And so I took his advice, you know. I'm not sure whether I would have taken the advice if it had been off a Westerner, you know, but because he was local, I thought, right, he knows what he's talking about. I'm just going to, and I think if I'd have sat on it for a while, I probably wouldn't have done anything either. But it was literally spun around and went straight back out, went to see him straight away. There's no way you could forget me, you know?
Right. It's not like, oh, we put your 20 in the register an hour and a half ago. Sorry, we can't refund you.
Yes. And he was absolutely shocked, the guy that I spoke to where I was staying, when I told him how much, I can't remember now, how much it cost. He was horrified.
Yeah.
It's like, oh dear. Oh, it's on a learning curve, you know, and nobody died.
Those unexpected things, right?
Yes. So yes, there is that. The planning, the researching, and do all of that. Isn't it? What about safety aspects when you're? So tell us where else you've been. So you've told us about that part of and like lovely that you went to Sweden and you went to France.
Yeah.
Brilliant that you could do that with family, how that set you all up. I just love that. That's really, really a nice way to do it. Obviously, we don't all have that opportunity, but if you do, I mean, fantastic, because it does set you up nicely. Does it give you that bit of a feel for it? So tell us more about your travels, and maybe bring in some safety aspects if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was 18, again, with people, but slightly different setting, I went on a trip abroad, our high school language clubs. So I went to Spain, and I did 8 days in Spain. And that was, you know, another situation of like, it was mostly kids and a couple of chaperones. And so that was largely speaking
do you remember which part of Spain you were in?
Oh, we went kind of all over the place.
Oh,
So we started out
lovely.
in Madrid. We did Barcelona.
Lovely.
Oh,
Oh,
we did Toledo, which was one of my favorites because
um,
I'm very much into historical and
oh,
decorative but functional weaponry, and they have a really lovely
oh,
sword
okay.
making factory there. We saw Don Quixote's windmills. So
Oh,
we really kind of like
right. Oh,
did
fantastic.
the whole swath.
Great
Yeah.
introduction to Spain then.
Yes, really, really lovely. But that was again a couple of adults as opposed to like a much larger group of kids. So that was sort of like that next step of independence where we were kind of on our own,
Yes.
sort of navigating the culture and the language and things like
Mm,
that. And I'm a language junkie, so I love it.
yeah.
I have been to, as an adult, we did a group trip to China. So that was a whole different, because we had a couple of people with us. This was when I was in graduate school for acupuncture. That was almost entirely like self-directed in our time off. So again, the opportunity to travel with people.
Yes.
And that's one of the nice things too. I know you were also going to touch on, we talked about before we came on this, loneliness. Um,
Yes.
Trips
Yes.
like that, I haven't taken them personally outside of like an educational
Mhm.
experience, but over here we have organizations like AAA, which is actually like
Yeah.
a car and travel insurance type organization. They plan trips all over the world,
Yes.
and everything is preset. Your meals are
Yeah.
preset, your lodging is preset. I think you might have to pay for the ticket. That may not necessarily be included because people come from all over the place for
Yes.
those trips. But
Yes.
aside from your travel, lodgings, food, transportation, all of that is taken care of. So that can be
Yes.
a really nice introduction for people who've
Absolutely
not done
agree with
solo
you.
travel.
Yes.
They
Yes.
usually
Because
give you a
you go
list of
as a
like,
solo,
yep. Yep.
but you
So
need to
like
look
you
through.
travel there solo, but you're not completely untethered. They
Yes.
usually give you a list of like, this is the type of clothing that you're going to need. This is the type
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
footwear. These are the
Fantastic.
options for
Yes.
events that you're going to do and local cultural immersion. So that's kind of the type of travel, some of the type of travel that I've done that I found to be really useful because I didn't have to worry about booking my hotel. I didn't have to worry
No.
about, a lot of the logistical stuff that goes into planning a trip. I let
Yes.
somebody else handle that, or it was handled for me. And that also gave me a framework of, oh, like I like these kind of hotels, or I like this type of experience,
Yeah.
or I really enjoyed this type of travel.
Yeah.
Um, I've traveled several times to England, to London. London is my second home. I think it's where I was supposed to be born.
Oh,
And, and I've spent a little time in Italy and Germany. So yeah, kind of making my way around.
and isn't it great with those groups where, like I said, you
Yeah.
don't travel as a solo, but
Mhm.
you get on a flight on your own. You may even meet somebody that's coming from the same country as you.
Oh
But
yeah.
you're 99% of the time you're met the other side then.
Yeah.
So when you actually land in the airport, there's somebody there waiting for you. So
Right.
that's another way is, like recently I went with a holiday company called TUI. I don't think you have it over there. I think it's
I don't
European.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I went on my own, but I booked it through them. So
Hmm.
I didn't have to worry about the flight was this time, the hotel's there, and I was
Right.
transferred from one to the other, and I was
Right.
only going for 4 days. So
Yeah.
that suited me fine for that because I wasn't there very long. I literally went for some sun to the
Yeah.
Gran Canaria and the Canary Islands.
Yeah.
And I was just literally, it was one of those times where I was just literally going for some sun because I'm been so fed up not having any warmth. And it was only 4 days. So that was fine. I didn't have to spend time looking around. So it's fine to do those things as well. A lot of people think that solo travel is all about getting on a plane for 10 hours, going to some exotic destination where you don't know the language, you don't know anything about, and it's not, it can be, yes, once you're a bit more experienced, but no, just go somewhere
Oh
local to
yeah.
you and start off that way. And I've got tips and guides and things, for people to have and read these things through. It doesn't have to be this big almighty thing, does it? That's going to scare you to death and, put you off forever.
Yeah. I one of my trips to the UK, I think it was in 2019, September of 2019. I was going to see a orchestra that I love.
Yeah.
And I was there, I think, on ground less than 48 hours. I like
Really?
literally just went for the show.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I had met someone through Instagram because we both followed the same group previously. She and I just sort of started following each other, and we met in real life while I was there.
Yes.
We met to get a cocktail. We were actually
Oh,
going to the same show.
this
So
is
we
so
met up
social
at the
media.
show.
Fantastic.
Right.
It's
So this is kind of like
fantastic.
in that loneliness piece is that like
Yes.
you find I'm also an introvert, and I think I'm part Labrador Retriever. So I
Yes.
can sit at a bar or a restaurant and just end up chatting with people,
Yes.
and that's how you make friends. I know Airbnb is, you have to be a little more careful with it than when it kind of first came out, when I first started using it in like the 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
You've got to be a lot more diligent about it, but I'm still in contact with Airbnb hosts that I've stayed with because we became friends over the course of the time that I stayed there. So even in the process of doing solo travel, you can find people and find connections that are now
You.
people and places to go back to. So when I go back to the UK, I reach out to all of these people.
Yes.
Hey, are you still in town? I'm
Yeah.
coming in. Do you want to get a
Yeah.
pint? You know, like things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
If I'm going back to certain areas, like, you know, I've done some trainings in Toronto and New York City, I will stay at the same places because now I know
Yes.
that I can trust these people. Or even if
Yes.
it's just, you know, somebody who's renting out a flat who doesn't stay there, I have a good relationship. And so the process of solo travel is also creating relationships. So if you're worried about
Yes.
being, I am an introvert though. I'm perfectly happy alone. If I don't talk to another single person, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
Like,
Me,
I'm okay
I'm
with
the
that.
same. Yes, I'm
Yeah. So if you're
absolutely
not
the
like
same.
that,
Yeah.
those pre-planned trips. And I'll say
Yes.
about those as well, they also kind of bake in some safety, right?
Mm,
Because like you might have some time to go
definitely.
off on your own, but again, all of this stuff is taken care of. You are with a group. There is safety
Yes.
in numbers. So starting to
Yes.
do something like that, you know, you
Yes.
could go to an area on a group trip, get comfortable
Mm,
with the area, and then
mm,
go back to that area as a
mm.
solo practitioner. If you've gone
Absolutely.
to some restaurants or you've created
Yes.
a little bit of inroads to that
Yes.
community, that can be a nice way to kind of, again, temper your way into it.
Mm.
So you can go for a short period of time, you can go with a group to make yourself a little more comfortable and settle into a slightly safer scenario before you strike out
Yeah.
on your own.
It's about building, these small steps. It's the small steps that build the confidence. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what I try to get across, don't try and do one great big, some people are happy to do that, go and do one big, audacious thing. And
Mm-hmm.
they're happy to do that. But most people aren't, and they just want those little steps to get you there. And like you said, when you go on those groups, it's fantastic because they will set those things up for you. And they
Yeah.
also give you time to go off and wander alone as well. So go off with the group and then go on your own. And just,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to make my circle bigger and bigger. So when I
Mm-hmm.
arrive somewhere, I go for a walk. All right, I know where I'm going now, and I'll go in a circle and come back. The next time I'll make the circle a bit bigger. And I'll just keep
Mm-hmm.
going out and out and out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like to walk everywhere when I
Yeah.
arrive somewhere, just so that I can get a feel for the place. But yes, I think that that kind of setup is brilliant. So, and also places like if you stay in hostels,
Mm-hmm.
hostels are fantastic for socializing,
Yeah.
for learning what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
what social activities are going on. I remember booking lots of events, lots of day trips and things like that, when I was staying in hostels, when I was traveling around. So hostels, I've got a lot of love for hostels. So for those people who want to do that as well. And, you can, as much as they are, they're a lot cheaper because they're a bigger dorms, that type of thing. You
Right.
can get a room on your own. I did that a couple of times as I was traveling around. I just needed some space on my own. And that's the good thing about traveling solo as well. You can either
Yeah.
be in a group or you just take yourself away and you can just
Yep.
be on your own.
Yep. I usually
And
do.
that's what I love.
I tend to avoid the hostel thing because as an introvert, like I love going out and doing things, but I need a lot of alone time to recharge.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
staying at a place that has the option of a solo room or just an apartment to myself or a flat to
Yes.
myself, that's a big deal for me. And that's something that, again, that I know about myself. So I plan for when
Yes.
I travel.
Yes. It's something that you learned, isn't it? And it's
Yep.
like, I loved my time traveling around in hostels, but that
Mm-hmm.
was over 20 years ago. I don't think I probably do it now, you know,
Right.
but
Right.
I've experienced it. And if I hadn't experienced it, I'd still probably want to, but I've
Mm-hmm.
experienced that now. So, I'm quite happy. I'm not saying I never would again, but
Yeah.
I'm happy that I've done that. I can leave that. I can leave that in the past, but traveling, you can, when you're solo, you can literally, because I remember meeting one of the girls in one of the hostels, and she said to me, "You can be quite out there," she said, "but sometimes you're quite invisible as well."
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how I like it.
Oh, I know. I know. It's my favorite. I love it. And that can be kind of like nerve-wracking for some people.
Yes.
So from the safety element of things, I love the fact, because you do the same thing I do. You just get your feet on the ground and
Yes.
you walk and you get to know your area. I think from a safety perspective, having a really good lay of the land,
Yes.
particularly if you're directionally challenged. I'm pretty good with directions, but I've traveled with people who are very directionally challenged. And it's like, okay, let's get a really good handle on where we are at any given time. I
Yeah.
know it sounds really silly and it can be hard in places like where I live, where it's cloudy, or where you live, where it's cloudy, but knowing your directions and having a compass. A lot of us have a compass on the phone, understand
Yes.
north, south, east, west
Yes.
in relation to a city, not
Yes.
just hiking.
No.
And if you can tell direction by sun or stars, that was something that I learned to do as a kid because my dad worked on the water. So
Uh-huh.
I learned to be able to say, like, okay, east is that way, west is this way. If I want to
Yes.
go north,
I do the same with the
if it's
sun.
getting
Yes.
dark, I can
Yeah.
follow this constellation. It
Yeah.
sounds so antiquated, but it really, like, I expect all of my technology to fail me at some
I
point in
know.
time. My phone will die. So
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
that's good to have from a safety perspective, knowing the lay of the land. One of the other things
Yeah.
that I do, particularly now that we have the convenience of having a map on our phone, if you are traveling internationally, always get the international data plan. It's worth
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Um, Getting
Yes.
on a
That's a
map and
great tip.
figuring out the shortest route between
Mhm.
two places, knowing
Yes.
a couple of different routes between several places. Like if I'm
Yeah.
trying to go to a concert hall or a restaurant or things like that, knowing, like, just looking at the map and familiarizing myself with
Yeah.
the streets, the layout, things like that. Because I've had so many close calls of just like being out after dark or going out for drinks and getting like not like drunk, disoriented, but like I'm in a city that I'm not familiar with and it takes me a
Yes,
minute
of
to
course.
like get
Yeah.
my sea legs for where I am. It's a
Yes.
miracle that my body is not in pieces in a national park at this point. Like I'm so many opportunities for people to take advantage of
I
me.
know.
So listen and learn, kids.
Yes.
Know your directions, know the shortest distance between 2 points. If you're getting a taxi or you're trying to get a bus, having a really good
Absolutely. Yeah.
awareness of
Yes.
where you exist
I
in
have a
space.
story.
Yeah, yes. Please share.
Sorry. I have a story about that. So I landed in Memphis and went off and did all the things. And you know what? In the rough guide, it warned the reader about arriving in Memphis by train at night. I arrived 10 o'clock at night, of course, as you do. And I had the best taxi driver ever. He just drove me around and he found me. He wouldn't let me stay anyway. Go in, check to see what it was like. No, you're not staying there. We're going to find you. So he, bless
Well,
him,
what a sweetheart.
and he absolutely was. And he charged me hardly anything because obviously he was talking to me and asking me what I was doing. And you get a lot of interest, don't you? You know, with
Yeah.
when you're traveling around like that. And so he did that, and he dropped me off, and he wouldn't hardly charge me any money either. So that was lovely. So next day, I'm off to the Sun Studios and doing the Beale Street and all of that. And it's about 9:30 at night. And I thought, right, as much as I really wanted to stay, I just want, because all the music's starting now,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
just wanted to stay, but I was on my own, and I thought, I don't know. So it was about 9:30, and so I was sat there having a couple of beers and eating some food and just watching it all in one of the bars. Better go, got on the taxi, and I said, because I was staying at the Days Inn, and he said to me, which one?
Yeah.
Bless him. Anything could have happened to me, but he drove around until he found where I was staying, and again, he charged me hardly anything,
Yeah.
So there's good and bad there,
Yep.
but I thought, why didn't you just pick a card up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
At the time, they all used to be the cards on the desk. They're probably not
Yep.
even there now, but they'd have a card. I didn't take a card and didn't take,
Yeah.
or I might have had one, but didn't take it with me. So
Yeah.
I didn't know which one it was. And he'd drive up to, what is it, this one? No, it's not that. And there must have been about 4 different tasting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
At least.
100%. When I
Oh my gosh.
when I was in London, I think it was the last time I was in London. I was there for a show in December, and it was at the O2. Which for anybody who's not familiar, that is like the Olympic Stadium. So that's like outside the city.
It is,
right?
Yes.
This
I was there not long ago, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. This was in December 2019. It was right before everything shut down. So I was staying in the city. And in the States, it's pretty easy to get a taxi at like 2:00 in the morning, 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
It's particularly in more metropolitan areas, even on the outskirts, you can usually find like a company that will run.
Yeah.
After the show got out, I went to I had a VIP ticket. So I went to the after party bar.
Nice.
As I tend to do, made a bunch of local friends. We went on a magical mystery tour looking for another bar. And so we like walked across parking lots to like a hotel, like some schmancy hotel bar that was having some like wicked holiday party that we basically just crashed. But now it's like 2:00 in the morning in the UK, like on the outskirts of London. And I'm just hoping that one of 2 Lyft drivers is awake and available to take me on like a half an hour taxi ride back to the city. And I did manage to find somebody, and he was just like, what the hell are you doing out this late out here? He's like, I'm happy to take you, but like, what is going on? And I said, I came over for a show. I just forgot that things here close down most of the time much sooner than they do in the United States.
Yeah.
That's that. And so again, he took pity on me. He took me right to my door. He made sure that I got in, charged me an incredibly reasonable fare. But same kind of a thing. It's like, I just didn't think to have the awareness of like, like your pubs close at like 10 sometimes. Whereas no, it's probably a good thing. Trust me, as somebody who bartended in the United States for a very long time and had to close the bar at 2:00 in the morning, I appreciate when pubs close at 10. Significantly less rowdy. But, cultural difference that just didn't click for me in my head until I was in a situation where I was like, oh, this could be bad.
I know. And the thing is, we're talking about safety aspects here as well. The thing is, that could literally put you off doing anything else, couldn't it? Because it can be a bit scary. But you can't let it, it's something that you learn from. And the next time you don't make the same mistake.
Yeah, there gets to a point where like, you're like, okay, well, I can't panic. Like you can panic a little bit, but you got to get yourself out of it. And there is just a weird kind of calm that takes over. And it's like, okay, we go into triage mode. What's the next thing? What's the thing after that? What have I tried?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It does something. It's that chemical that takes over in your brain, doesn't it? To calm you down so you don't panic. Because
I really do think that's
when I left,
sorry, go ahead.
Especially when I left Beale Street. Because he took me down some really dark roads with no lights. I couldn't see any lights anywhere. It was in the middle of nowhere to me, so anything could have happened. And I remember sitting there thinking, right, well, this is either going to be good or bad, one or the other, and I thought there's nothing I can do about it. Even if I jumped out the car now, I wouldn't know where to go or what to do. But you can't let the worst thing that could happen to you stick into your mind. So that's what the last thing you think of, because that doesn't work either. You just stay positive. And like every sticky situation I've been in, I've been absolutely fine. And that's all you have to think about, is that it will be fine in the end.
I think the thing that I love the most about solo travel is it does make you so much more resourceful.
Yes.
And so much more self-reliant. And I think on the other side of all of this, much more confident. I remember like you were talking about that and it just sparked this memory. I was at a seminar in New York City and I was staying with a friend of mine. She and I had gone to grad school together. And we were going to a pop-up bar in Brooklyn in like a warehouse district. And she had the address and we took the subway and we're walking, and it is a warehouse district. So when you were talking about just going down some streets where there are no lights, we're walking down and like, we're both very much on guard. Yes. And she goes, what happens if we get jumped? I said, you run and I fight. That's what happens if we get jumped, because I can fight and you are faster than I am. I'm clumsy. I'll trip, but I can fight. So I will fight and you will run. And this is how we will get help or get out of here. She goes, I'm okay with that plan. I was like, okay, cool. And we just kept walking forward. But it was like, I was like, where is this? She's like, I honestly had no idea it was going to be like this. And I was like, well, we're here now. We deal with it because we're here now.
Yeah,
So.
no, exactly. And for me, being, I am divorced. A lot of my friends, they're married, so they can't, I could sit around and not do anything for the rest of my life, but I have to wait for somebody who's married to be able to come with me. And I totally get it, because they've got a relationship, but to be able to just go off and do things, travel, make your own itinerary. That's what you have to do. And as you said, for me, I drive all over the country, to go wherever, to be at an event, or, and I just go on my own, just sort out where I need to park or get the train or whatever it is. I'm happy to do that. Some people are not happy even driving for a long distance on their own, whereas even with my job, I'm still part-time work. I work for the NHS in the UK. 3 days a week. Well, before the pandemic, I used to drive. There's a country in the UK called Wales, and I used to drive from the south, because I'm in the south, up to the north. That's a 5-hour drive a lot of the time, and I'd be up and down, up and down, up and down. So it's nothing to me, to go and drive that amount of time. But a lot of people, they're not happy going outside of their own comfort zone, the town where they are, the city where they are.
And that's fine if that's what makes them happy, but I'm the same way. And I realized, particularly like in my early 30s, like once I, got my degree and started my company and settled sort of into the life where I am right now in Providence, I want to have certain experiences.
Yes.
And I personally, this is how I feel. I can't wait for somebody. If I'm waiting for somebody else to be a part of that experience, I could be waiting a very, very, very long time. So that was sort of what spurred me into, real solo travel of like, I want to see that orchestra in England. I'm going to go.
Yes.
I live close enough to New York City. I'm a 3-hour train ride from New York. That is a music mecca. There are a bunch of bands that are based in New York City that I like. There are a bunch of bands that travel to New York City that I like. There's the opera. There's so much there. So it is not uncommon for me to go down and see a show and come back in less than 24 hours.
Yes.
I can't, it was I don't think it was, I think it was pre-pandemic, but there's a great band called Snarky Puppy, huge ensemble band, kind of, I don't love the word fusion, but it's very interesting, kind of like jazz influence, world music influence, really dynamic group. A lot of their members are in New York and then they play New York. So they were doing a show. So I went down on a Saturday. I got a hotel. I was in the hotel for a grand total of like 2 hours. Again, there was an after show and I went to that. Met somebody, a young kid, 19 years old, also seeing the band. I got an Uber to the after party and I was like, where are you going? And he's like, well, I'm staying in Brooklyn, however many blocks away. I was like, get in, we'll drop you off. And he was like, really? He's like, it's in the opposite direction. I was like, it's 10 minutes in the opposite direction. You can get pizza on the way. Get in a car with a stranger. Some of my best experiences are because I got in a car with a stranger. I don't necessarily recommend that, but like it's turfed out really well for me.
I know what you mean. Yes.
But, I came back, I got 3 hours of sleep. I came back on the train the next day and I called my dad. It happened to be Father's Day in the US. And I said, Happy Father's Day. What are you up to? And he told me what he was doing. And he said, what did you do? I said, I just got back from New York. I went down last night for a show and I just got in and I'm probably going to go out for a beer with my friend Chris and then kind of have a lazy Sunday the rest of the day. And he goes, I love that. I said, what? He goes, you just live your life.
Yes.
You make a decision to go do a thing and you go do the thing and you don't let anybody stand in your way and you don't let anything stop you. And that's been, I think, one of the greatest gifts of this whole experience is the confidence to say, I want to do the thing and I'm not going to wait for somebody else to make me more comfortable or so I can do it. So I feel like I have permission to do it or I can do it a little more safely. There are ways that I can do it alone that I can still do it safely.
Absolutely. And when I because when I went traveling, when I did the round the world thing, that was 1999, 2000. So when I got back, I think I was in travel mode for about a year when
Yeah.
I got back. But in those days, solo travel was so expensive. You
Yeah.
couldn't, so I didn't do anything for years. So it's only been the last couple of years really that I've kind of embraced it again, realizing, well,
Yeah.
especially since the pandemic, I suppose.
Yeah.
I realized,
Prices have
well,
changed a lot since that.
oh yes, absolutely it has, and I realized that no, you don't have to wait around for people
Mhm.
because they're going to do their own thing anyway. They've got their own partners, they're doing their own thing with their own families.
Yep.
And so, yes. And so exactly, just embrace it and go for it because it's so much more open these days, isn't it?
It's
It's easy to jump like I'm 20 minutes away from the airport here,
same.
literally 20 minutes away, which is fantastic. So I've booked myself, I'm off on the 6th of June, and I'm off to Spain for a week.
What area?
It's inland and you fly into, an airport called Murcia, and it's in a little place called Mazaron,
Nice.
and it's this little port. And friends of mine, they've had a little villa there for about 20 years, and so they've let me. I can go over and stay, while they're
Oh,
not
gorgeous.
there. And they send me little videos about how it looks and all of that, and it's just lovely there. So I think I might move there.
You just won't come home. Just one-way ticket.
Back, yeah. So yes, it's solo travel is there to be embraced by everybody. And all the tips that we've given people today as well, especially the ones that you've come up with, are fantastic for them to get started. So as a closer now, what would be your, let's go for three top tips. If you could give some advice to somebody who is just on that solo travel journey and are really, really thinking of it, but not quite sure, what are the 3 things that you think might just push them over the edge?
Oh man. Push them over the edge to travel.
Yes, as in, like the feeling, how they would feel, the transformation, all of that.
Oh my gosh. It's such an adrenaline rush.
Mm.
You will gain so much confidence in who you are as a person and your ability to function in the world. Like you just feel absolutely unkillable.
Yeah.
You will have so much fun, particularly because I think you can plan your trip to the nth degree, but the best experiences that I've had are the ones that were completely accidental.
Absolutely.
When I was in the UK, I saw an advert for an immersive Gatsby experience on the side of a bus. And I love vintage culture. I was in a cabaret troupe. We did vintage dance. So I ended up going to that. I now have friends from that because I met the cast members and it was really fun. So, you're going to gain a lot of confidence. You're going to have unexpected experiences that will 100% change your life and create relationships that you can have for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And you will see things entirely other. I think there is so much deep, meaningful, emotional, and spiritual value in immersing yourself in another culture, even if they speak the same language.
Yes.
English culture, very, very different nowadays from American culture.
Absolutely.
And it is something that there are so many things about it that I love and appreciate and just die to be a part of when I'm there. So, it doesn't have to be, like you said, this thing where you take yourself out of your reality entirely and don't speak the language and don't understand the culture. You can do that very accessibly without having to scare the crap out of yourself in the process. So I would say those are the 3 things that I think are probably some of the most valuable for me as a solo traveler.
It is, and I agree with all of that. And it's also about that transformation when you come back, how your life changes. So for me, when I got back, my education was just school. I never went to uni. I came back and I went to uni. I got my degree, and because I thought once I've done that, I want to go off in the world and do different things, do something bigger. And so that was massive for me. I spent the next 4 years doing a degree in education and getting a teaching qualification. And doing all of that. And it was great to be part of uni life, even though I was still working. It was part-time, which I'd never experienced before. And I was the first one in my family to actually go to uni,
Oh,
so
wow.
there were a couple of firsts there. And it is about that when you come back, you have this confidence. And I would say this, that unless you've done it, we couldn't pass this feeling on to anybody else. You have to feel it yourself. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
100%. Like there's just not something that words don't capture it.
No,
you know,
you're absolutely right. You can't tell somebody what that feeling is. You can explain it and how you felt, but
sure,
you can't pass that feeling on, can you? You know, you have to feel it for yourself. And once you've done it,
I think because it's a core thing. Like when you come back from solo travel, you're not the same person that you were when you left. And that's a fundamental kind of cellular change to me.
Yes.
And that happens even if I go to the same place, each time I come back, I'm a different person. I've grown and I approached my life here in Providence differently because of what happened to me and how I changed when I traveled. And that is an invaluable lesson that I wouldn't get if I didn't do this. I wouldn't think differently. I think solo travel allows me to think more three-dimensionally, and gives me a much greater sense of perspective.
Oh, absolutely. All of the above. All of the above. And it just makes me, I just need to go now. You know, I
know. I'm just like, okay, so I'm logging off of here and getting on Airbnb immediately.
Yes, I know. Isn't it fantastic? This is why I love my podcast, because I get to talk to people like you. You know, we're like-minded people. We love traveling. It doesn't always have to be literally on our own. But we know, it's like a little secret, isn't it? We know what that feeling is.
We're part of the club.
It is, isn't it? You know, it's like we know what that's going to give us when we do it. And like you said, every time, even if you go back to the same place, every time you do it, you have something else. There's something else you bring back with you. So I've loved this podcast. Thank you ever so much for coming on. I could talk to you for another hour.
Oh my gosh, yes, 100%. Let's do an episode 2.
I know, I always say it'll only be about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, but I just can't do it.
It's tough. It's such a great, expansive subject. There are so many things that we could talk about. So
it is. It absolutely is. You know, there's always something else that we could talk about, and all of our experiences. And like you said, maybe we need a second episode. So if anybody would like to contact you about anything that we've talked about today, you can send me your social media. If you're on Instagram or wherever you are, I will put it in the show notes, and that would be great. And they can contact you that way. But thank you so much, Dr. Eliza Collins.
Thank you, Terri. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I really enjoyed it. It's been
me
lovely.
too.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes this episode of Wanderlust Diaries, celebrating the fearless spirit of solo female travellers who are 40 and beyond. I hope you found inspiration, valuable insights, and a renewed sense of wanderlust. Thank you to all our incredible listeners who have joined us on this exciting journey. Remember, age should never stop your quest for adventure, because the world is waiting for you to explore its wonders. And don't forget to join our community on social media to connect with fellow travellers, and subscribe and review us on your favourite podcast platform. All links are in the show notes. Keep dreaming, keep exploring, and stay fearless. Until next time, this is Terri Reynolds signing off from Wanderlust Diaries. Psst, don't keep me a secret. Please tell your friends and fellow travellers.